is in crisis.
การแก้ไขปัญหาโควิดถือเป็นวาระแห่งชาติ
And people are looking for hope and answers. Thai PBS World is there with you with the best minds of the day. Join us on Thai PBS World tonight, every weekdays at 7 p.m. Thai PBS World, we bring Thailand to the world.
Good evening and welcome to Thai PBS World. I'm Thep Chayong.
Good evening, I'm Nad Bunag.
Just about an hour ago, the Prime Minister appeared on national TV to talk about the directions of his government. It was his first address to the country after the appointment of 6 new cabinet members, and we have more of that later on.
And today, Thailand has found 3 new cases of COVID-19. All of them came back from overseas, and on the other side of it, there are no local transmissions.
But the caution from the Prime Minister tonight is that despite the good news, the absence of local infections, we still need to be prepared to cope with long-term impact from the pandemic, at least for several months to come.
Yes.
All right, tonight we'll start with the first day at work of the new cabinet members. After being sworn in yesterday, the 6 new cabinet members began work this morning. Here, along with the rest of the cabinet, they posed for a photo session in front of the Thai Kufa building in the government house before the weekly cabinet meeting. I wish you all good luck, Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha said to the cabinet members after the photo session. And in keeping with the custom, the new cabinet members paid homage to sacred shrines in the government house complex to ask for blessings. The new Energy Minister Supathanapong Chanmichao admitted that he will be facing a major challenge in his new job, given the extraordinary situation brought about by the pandemic. But he said that he will try his best to carry out his duty. And about an hour ago, the Prime Minister addressed the country with a caution that the impact from the coronavirus on the economy will be something long-term, and that Thai people should be prepared to deal with these drawn-out economic problems. But he expressed confidence that his government, with the new cabinet members, will be working hard to address all the issues concerning the country. Yeah. He said he has given his government a 5-point direction. The first is how to find ways to revitalize major businesses, especially those who have been affected most by the pandemic, to make sure that the people who are being unemployed will be taken care of. Then he wants to see solutions to the problem that are sustainable. That means that solutions that will have long-term effect in dealing with the impact. And the third point is that he wanted to see more incentives to help businesses survive the impact. And the fourth is that he wants to see jobs created for people who are mostly new graduates, who are certainly going to face a lot of difficult job prospects. And the fifth one is that he wants to see honesty and transparency in carrying out all the projects to be initiated by his government from this point on. And the Prime Minister said that he has instructed the new Finance Minister, Kunpee Dao Chai, to organize a meeting with what he called top brains of the country, representing all sectors, to sit down and jointly find ways out of these economic doldrums. And of course, he said he himself will be sitting down in some workshop that are being designed to in which people representing all walks of life will be sitting there with him to talk about ways to deal with the problems the country is facing. So it's basically what the Prime Minister said in his 15-minute speech to the country. And of course, he appeared relaxed and very much to the point. Yeah.
And the key point here is that the main focus would be reviving the economy from the pandemic.
That's right. And now let's move to the ongoing student protests, which are likely to intensify in the coming week. The ongoing protests to demand a revision of the Constitution and the House of Representatives to be dissolved have given rise to concerns that they could lead to a collision course with people who are opposed to what they see as their increasingly defiant stand against the monarchy. And as the students plan another major demonstration at the Democracy Monument this week, Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha today warned against any attempts to create chaos in the country. Questioned the motive of the protest and suggested that the students are being manipulated by certain groups of people. He said he wanted to find out who is financing their protests. However, he said he will see to it that authorities handle the protests with care. Tensions have risen after thousands of people, mostly students, rally at Rangsit campus of Thammasat University on the outskirts of Bangkok on Friday. The protesters issued a list of demands aimed directly at a sweeping reform of the monarchy. The demands are seen as a direct and unprecedented challenge to the country's most revered institution. The demands include an abrogation of the lèse-majesté law and legal immunity for the monarchy, an end to glorification of the monarchy, and an abolition of the Privy Council. Political observers said that the demand echoes many of the proposals initiated by some prominent academics who have been accused by loyalists of being anti-monarchy. Besides the demand, what also angered many people was a parody on the monarchy on the rally stage. Central to the protesters' message at all the rallies, including the one at Thammasat University, is what they describe as their commitment to continuing the spirit of the 1932 revolution. The historical event was signified by a proclamation ending the system of absolute monarchy. The administration of Thammasat University is trying to distance itself from the student rally. In a statement issued today, it said it respects students' freedom of expression only when they are within the constitutional and legal framework. It said it will conduct an investigation into allegations that the rally last Friday was offensive to the monarchy. The statement followed another statement from the Thammasat Students' Union, which was responsible for organizing the rally. It insisted that the protesters were expressing themselves in ways that are constitutional and are in accordance with international conventions on civil and political rights. The student union also vowed to continue with their fight for democracy.
And yesterday, 105 academics from various universities issued a joint statement in support of the political rally. It said the students were expressing themselves with the legal framework and in accordance with democratic principles. Prime Minister Prayut today dismissed the statement of the academics. He asked, do we have only 105 academics in this country? I think we have 1,000 or 10,000 more academics. And do we know what they think about this issue? And today, a network of 353 academics also issued a statement to support the students' demand, insisting that people need to have democratic space to express themselves. Amid a growing call by royalists and supporters of the government for legal action to be taken against the student protest leaders, a group of people in Khon Kaen province asked police to file a lèse-majesté charge against a key leader of the protest, Anon Nampa, for what they alleged to be his offensive remarks against the monarchy during the rally. Anon was arrested last week for inciting public unrest for his role in earlier protests, but was freed on bail. Meanwhile, in Bangkok, a group of lawyers filed a petition with His Majesty the King for the lèse-majesté law to be applied against the protesters. Prime Minister Prayut said recently that His Majesty the King had shown his compassion towards those who might have offended the royal institution by asking that the lèse-majesté law not to be used against them. Yesterday, spokesman of the Defense Ministry, Lieutenant General Kongchip Tantrawanit, described the protesters' demand as being out of bounds and would create conflicts in the society. He said the protesters are stepping on a sensitive issue that might lead to confrontation and a potential conflict in the society. He said it should be the responsibility of everyone to help bring about common sense and restrain emotions. However, he said that government authorities still have a positive view of these student activists. He said students are a constructive force that has been passed down from generation to generation, and we are confident that Thai people have enough sound judgment not to be manipulated by any political groups. So that is the latest on the student protests.
Yeah, and several opposition politicians and pro-democracy advocates have come out in defense of the student. They urge the powers that be to listen to the voice of the protesters and urge state authorities to exercise restraint to prevent the situation from turning violent. Mr. Pitha Limcharanrat, leader of Khao Klai or Move Forward Party, said society should listen to the voice of the students, which he described as the voice of the time. Pitha also defended the demands put forth by the protesters, saying that they should not be seen as being offensive to the monarchy. He said, we Khao Klai Party believes that it is something that can be discussed in a democratic society based on reason, maturity, and sensibility. And the ongoing political strife are not only pitting supporters and opponents of the current status quo against each other. It has also become a source of conflicts in many families, with parents and their children taking opposing stands. The social media have been full of complaints from parents who are unhappy that their children have been joining the anti-government rallies, and even more so with their increasingly anti-monarchy views. And on the other hand, young people who have become more politically active have blamed their parents as being too conservative or out of date, out of sync of the present situation. So this is
some sort of conflict here.
So we have been hearing a lot of complaints in this manner for quite some time in the past few weeks since the rallies and the demonstrations broke out. I'm sure that you must have friends and people you know that have made similar complaints.
Maybe, but we can see that there's some sort of difference with the way they perceive things from the older generation and the younger generation. And just like how we've discussed before, some of the protesters secretly went to these demonstrations without the parents' consent.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, this becomes really a major topic of debate now in the society, because it looks like we have two generations of people having opposing views on the current political situation. The younger ones say they are in a hurry to see changes, but the older generation believes that this present status quo is not that bad because they don't see a better alternative, right? So they said we stick with the present status quo is safer then. But of course, we hope that this will not blow up into a confrontation.
Hopefully there are no violent protests like back in the past.
Yeah, that's right. That was most people are afraid that the current confrontation could turn violent and ended up the same way as it did back in 1976 when there was a bloodbath and a lot of people were killed. So that is a scenario that we certainly don't want to see happen, right? And now let's move on to the latest on the much publicized hit and run case involving Kun Warayut Yuvithaya, and heir to the Red Bull business empire. The former public prosecutor at the center of this much publicized case has finally spoken out. Kun Net Nak Suk, who resigned as Deputy Attorney General on Tuesday, appeared before the House Committee on Laws, Justice and Human Rights to defend his decision to acquit Warayut from charges of reckless driving resulting in death in the hit and run case in 2012. It was his first public appearance since he decided to drop the case against Warayut in June this year. Ned insisted in his testimony that his decision was based entirely on the evidence provided in the police report on the case. He said the police report made it clear that Volayud's Ferrari was traveling at a speed of 79 kilometers an hour when it rammed into a motorcycle driven by the police officer on Sukhumvit Road, killing him on the spot. Though experts commissioned by the Police Central Forensic Division had earlier put the speed at 177 kilometers an hour in his report, Nate insists that it was never mentioned in the police report, which served as the basis for his decision whether to have the suspect prosecuted or not. Two witnesses were also cited by the police as claiming that they saw the police officer's motorcycle cut in front of the Ferrari. Nate said that based on the police report, he could not possibly have Volayud prosecuted for reckless driving causing death, as the suspect was driving at a legal speed and not recklessly as widely understood. He denied there was any interference in his decision to drop the case against the suspect and said he was willing to have his personal assets investigated if there were doubts. Nate said he decided to resign early this week before his mandatory retirement age because he was responsible for handling the case and because he wanted to protect the image of the Office of the Attorney General. So that's the latest of the much publicized hit and run case. It's interesting because Kun Nate has been absent, has been silent for 2 months. So this is the first time that he came out and speak on the case, but insisting on his original stand that he made the decision to drop the case simply because the police report gave him no other choice.
Well, despite the decision here, this controversy is still there because many people seem to disagree with what they actually did.
That's right.
So moving on to U.S. politics, as we may have heard, Kamala Harris has been chosen to be Joe Biden's running mate. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden and his new running mate Kamala Harris made their first appearance in Delaware as the campaign for the White House is getting more intense. The two delivered remarks just days before Mr. Biden formally accepts the Democratic presidential nomination. While introducing Ms. Harris as his running mate, he said he has no doubt that he picked the right person to join him as the next Vice President of the United States of America.
And this morning, all across the nation, little girls woke up, especially little black and brown girls, who so often feel overlooked and undervalued in their communities. But today, just maybe, they're seeing themselves for the first time in a new way as the stuff of president and vice presidents. Kamala Harris has had your back, and now we have to have her back. She's going to stand with me in this campaign, and all of us are going to stand up for her. On January 20th, 2021, we're all going to watch Senator Harris raise her right hand and swear the oath of office as the first woman ever to serve in the second highest office in America, in this land. And then we're going to get to work fixing the mess that President Trump and Vice President Pence have created.
The very hopeful remarks here. At the same time, Ms. Harris also said during her remarks that she is incredibly honored for being chosen as Mr. Biden's running mate and that she is very ready to get to work.
I am incredibly honored by this responsibility, and I'm ready to get to work. I am ready to get to work. After the most competitive primary in history, the country received a resounding message that Joe was the person to lead us forward. And Joe, I'm so proud to stand with you. And I do so mindful of all the heroic and ambitious women before me, whose sacrifice, determination, and resilience makes my presence here today even possible. And you are the reason I know we are going to bring our country closer to realizing its great promise. But to do it, we'll need to work, organize, and vote like never before, because we need more than a victory on November 3rd. We need a mandate that proves that the past few years do not represent who we are or who we aspire to be.
During their first appearance, they also took this opportunity to criticize President Donald Trump for mismanaging the coronavirus pandemic, as well as making an urgent argument for a Biden administration. On the other hand, President Donald Trump made a comment after their first appearance. He questioned whether Mr. Biden made the right choice, as Mr. Trump remembered that Ms. Harris said horrible things about him and that there was nobody more insulting to him than she was. So what will happen next after this? So Mr. Biden will formally accept the Democratic presidential nomination at next week's convention, which will largely be a virtual event because of the coronavirus pandemic. At the same time, Mr. Trump will be nominated for a second four-year term in the White House by his fellow Republicans at their party convention a week later. As part of the campaign, Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden will hold 3 debates in September and October, while Ms. Harris will debate Vice President Mike Pence in October. So we'll have to see how it goes with the presidential election.
So the reaction from President Trump wasn't something unexpected?
Well, it's a little bit expected that we might hear some criticism from President Trump, because that's the opposition. So it's not surprising that Mr. Trump has something to criticize about.
Okay.
Yeah. And just so you know, these are the stories we've also been following.
Thailand found 3 new cases of COVID-19 today. All of them are returnees from Singapore and India. The new cases brought the total number of infections in the country to 3,359, with no new recoveries nor fatalities. The cabinet has declared September 4th and the 7th as special public holidays to compensate for this year's Songkran holidays that were cancelled due to the coronavirus outbreak. Deputy Prime Minister Wissanuk Khreungam said the long weekend in September was a good choice, as this month does not have any public holidays. Up to 4 million people might lose their jobs by the end of this year as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the ongoing economic issues. The Thailand Development Research Institute, or TDRI, predicts that the unemployment crisis may continue for the next 2 years, with at least 3 million people losing their jobs on average per year. 2 members of security forces protecting teachers in Thailand's southern border provinces of Pattani and Narathiwat were killed and 4 others injured in 2 separate roadside bomb blasts this morning. The attacks coincide with the first day of the resumption of in-person classes in schools across the country.
And these are the stories we've been following today. And speaking of English language, of course, it's definitely a very important skill. But when we look at it, there is a monk at Saket Ratawara Mahavihan Temple, or the Golden Mount, has conducted an English course, not just for people who want to improve their English, but also to find their peace of mind. So that is definitely 2 important skills
very
here.
interesting, finding peace of mind through English.
Definitely.
Quite a challenge for many.
Yeah, because for some people, English language is already a challenge, but to find their inner peace is definitely something totally different. So let's have a look at this report by Kun Thanade Tanparipan.
In the modern days, social network has played a massive role in our life and has brought us closer together in terms of communication and deliver messages. However, as we can see, there are so many hate speech when any situation happens in the society, and that is the reason why positive messages on peace has become a very important issue. Meanwhile, an online course has been conducted on the topic English for Peace of Mind to teach both English and positive messages on peace with the relevant contents in Buddha teachings.
Thai PBS World Tonight.
Take a deep breath 3 times before you post it. Yeah. Or just get away.
I had a chance to talk
And
to
then
a
when-
monk
when that
who
anger
leads
is
this
gone.
online course, and he explained that.
Exactly. Yeah. The purpose of this program is to open the space or channel for people to reach their inner peace through learning English. I think Buddhism in Thailand as a social capital, it's very powerful. But anyway, we tend to use it less and less. Social capital like Buddhism, the more you use it, the powerful it is. So I think it would be better if we can help people, no matter who they are, what their age, or even religion or faith. It's okay to reach their inner peace of mind. I think English can help them because, to be honest, I think people who try to learn English or improve their English, they're kind of the determined people, right? So because of these people, they're going to create something positive in the future. And I think in that case, it would be very great to inspire them to be a great leader, not just only think for themselves. I think if you just only take a look at, your Facebook, Instagram, or even, Twitter, a lot of hate speech. And right now, in many situations, sometimes there's a lot of combination of religious and political hate speech. It even divided more in this society. So I think if we can cultivate value of peace, first of all, like our motto, IBHAP motto is peace in one heart, starts in one hand, yours. Before we bring happiness or peace to anyone, we have to bring it to our own heart first. And then we can expand or we can share that peace to others.
Positive messages on peace and social justice are in the Buddha's teaching. For instance, mindfulness as means for creating inner peace and code of conduct for peaceful society. Most of the contents can be adopted by people of all faiths alike.
ทางเชนสคูลเนี่ยเขาจัดการมันเป็นสิ่งที่มันให้แรงบันดาลใจ
That's definitely a very interesting session here, Kuntep Chai.
That's right. You may have noticed that I was there at the orientation
Yes.
of the course, but I was there not as an instructor, but was there as someone to share his experience on English learning.
So more of sharing experience, not
right.
really as an instructor.
That's right. And I have to admire Pra Napan very much because he has been working very hard in promoting the teaching of English among monks at the temple. You know, the Saket, Wat Saket is one of Thailand's most famous temple, Buddhist temples, right? And he's also working on another project to teach novices at the temple to become English-speaking tour guide. Because it's a temple that draws a lot of foreign tourists, but they don't have any formal tour guides. That's why he's trying to help novices there to learn English, so that one day these young monks
That's definitely
will become tour
that's a
guides.
very good initiative because we don't really see a lot of monks who are fluent in English. So this initiative is actually going to improve the skills of all these monks. And just like how you said that all these tourists can understand what the temple is all about.
Now let's move on to the latest on the COVID-19. In recent weeks, we have been hearing about resurgence of new coronavirus cases in some countries, even in countries that we thought that was safe and had things under controls. So should we start worrying about Thailand? We try to find our answer from our guest tonight, Dr. Thanarak Pripat, Deputy Director General of the Disease Control Department. Good evening, Dr. Thanarak.
Good evening สวัส
Good
ดีครับ
evening. So welcome to our program. It's glad to have our doctor back in the house again.
Thank you
All right, Dr. Narak, of course you must have been hearing about this resurgence of new cases in some countries, even in countries that we thought that were already safe and had things under control. So what does this tell us?
Actually it's the same story that we have been discussed all along, that it is not easy, to eliminate the virus from any countries. Since it is very infectious, so there is a chance, always there is a possibility that the disease will come back. But hopefully, if the countries prepare itself very well, the country may find some cases, but hopefully they can control it very quickly. So there is no widespread epidemics within the countries that start to see the case coming. That is something that Thailand is trying to do as well. We always say that one day we may find new cases again, but hopefully we can control it quickly. So having no case in the countries is not realistic goals. Finding the new case is always possible, but hopefully we can control it.
Do you think we should be scared of the COVID-19 second wave in Thailand because neighboring countries seems to see the resurgence of cases such as in the Philippines or in Vietnam?
I don't think we should be scared. What we should be is that we should realize and should understand that there is a chance that we will find a new case. But and one thing is that we should keep in mind is that we have been able to control it once. We knew how to do it, and I think if it's happened, we can do it again. And the issue will be that during these times, we have to have the mind open our mind that the case may come back. So instead of worrying about it or scared about it, I think what we should do is we should review what we did last time, what we did to ourselves, what we did to our family, to our office, to our societies as a whole. Then think about it, and then when start to get worse, and when we start to see new cases coming, we should be prepared on applying those knowledge and act in the way that we should do. And there should not be any panic, and there should not be any overreactions again, because as I mentioned, we have been through the situation once, and if we keep calm, I believe that we can do it again.
But do you have any idea what went wrong in these countries which saw a sudden resurgence of new cases? Something we can learn from them?
There are a lot of things that we can learn from our neighboring countries. One thing that we have to keep in mind that there is no two countries that are exactly the same. The situation in their countries is not the same as in our countries. So if we learn something, we should ask ourselves, can we apply that to our countries, and then how should we make it better? For example, the outbreak back in Hong Kong, most of the parties speculate that it was because of Hong Kong has opened up the country quickly, and they also have the policy of quarantine everybody for 14 days, but they have so many kind of quarantine. Some is quarantined by the state, some of the quarantines run by the private, and some just they also have some home quarantine. And because of those policy, and when someone who should be quarantined, they are not quarantined well enough, then the disease starts to spread from one person to another, and then after they know what happened, the disease has already spread very quickly. So quarantine is very, very important, and we should stick to our operation procedures, and we should follow whatever we think is best for us. In other countries, for example, in Vietnam, when they found the first case of their second waves, the case visited the hospitals, and there were an outbreak within the hospital. So many staff and so many patients got infection from the index case, from the first case. That's also tell us that if we have the situation, if we found the second case, or if we have the local transmission once again, the first case of the local transmission is very likely to be diagnosed and very likely to visit the hospital as well. So the hospital will be the breaking point. So that's also tell us that we should also keep doing what we have already been done. That is having a strict infection prevention in the hospitals. We have done quite a good job during the first wave, so we should continue to do that, and we should continue to do it today as well. In preparation for the second wave, it's very important for every hospital, private or public, that they should be aware and should keep their infection control programs running at the very high standards. Those are the lessons from Vietnam, and I think there are also so many countries that probably change strategy a little bit. For example, in Japan, they open up very quickly. They don't even have the zero case report yet, and they start to reopen their countries. In the first wave, they have a high number in death as well. So what they did differently in the second wave or during this time is that they prepare more hospital bed than the first wave. Although they have a lot more patients in second wave, but if you look back, you see that the occupation rate of the hospital is still very low, less than 50%. So they have a lot more bed for the patients. And the second things they did differently was that in the second wave they protect the elderly very well. So during the second wave, if you look at Japan, there's a lower number of deaths when compared to the first wave. So that is how they apply what their mistake was in the first wave to the second wave. And for the second wave, if you look closely, we will see that Japan did not really close down or lock down that as strict at the first time around. So to me, every country learn from each other, learn from themselves, and then they adjust their strategy accordingly. So that, for example, Japan, if you look at Japan today, although they still have cases, but they are not as worried as the first time around as well. So there are so many things, if I can go on and on.
No, but Dr. Thoronath, the next challenge for Thailand is that we are opening up the country for more foreign visitors, right? And in fact, there are now thousands waiting to enter the country. So what do you think we should look out for in particular?
At these times, although we have a lot more foreigners coming in, but still we quarantine everybody, and we quarantine them very strictly. We have 3 types of quarantine. We still do not allow anybody to quarantine at home yet. We quarantine them at the quarantine site that prepared by the central government. We have what we call alternative quarantine site. That is the hotel that if anybody who don't like the quarantine site that the government prepare for them, they can pay for themselves, and then they can stay at the probably more luxuries, larger rooms. And the third type was what we call organizational quarantine. That is for the migrant workers that we saw in the sixth phase of open up. So we still have the quarantine, and we have the ways that each the government and the hospital, private hospital, can come in and check for the qualities. So we have double and probably you can say triple check for the quality of the quarantine site. And the numbers of travelers coming into the country is still limited by the quarantine site that we have. At the moment, on average, we have roughly around 500 to 700 travelers to come in. Those mainly are still Thai people, but we start to see some of the foreign citizens that arrived in the country as well. So, as I mentioned earlier, and every time when I say this, is that it is not the risk that we should consider. It is, if there is the risk, we should consider on how can we control those risks or how can we lower those risks. So we know that incoming travelers from internationals can have high risk. The issue is that how high the risk we can handle, and I mean how can we arrange the intervention so that we can lower those risks to the levels that we feel satisfied.
No, but opening the country to tourism, is that something that you certainly want to have some caution about?
Yes, of course. If we want to open up for the short-term travelers, then we need to prepare ourselves very well. There are so many steps that we have to take, starting from what countries we should allow to come in, and what province or what site or travel site we should allow international tourists to come in, and how can we build what I will call the virtual barriers that can protect most of the Thai people from get infection in case that international tourists came in with infections. So those kind of barriers, New Zealanders call it the bubbles.
Yeah.
That build the barriers between most of the Thai citizens and the tourists. Of course, there will be some of the Thais who need to involve or need to come into close contact with the tourists. But how can we limit the numbers, and how can we make sure that we can detect the infection as soon as they got it? So if we can do all that, I believe that we can probably start to pilot bringing in some of the international tourists to test our system. But to me, we like to mention something about short-term tourists. That is, anybody who want to come in and want to stay for less than 14 days. But I think it should be more beneficial if we open up for more long-term travelers or long-term tourists who want to come in and stay in Thailand for longer than 14 days. Those will be more beneficial and easier to manage than the short-term tourists. I mean, we may have some limited times for them so that we check them that they have infection or not. During that time, they may have they can travel, but they cannot travel far. I mean, they can travel within the limitation or within the rules that we set. But after 14 days, they can, probably travel wider. And since 14 days usually is the longest incubation period that we have. So, there are so many options, and there are so many ways that we can do it. As I always say, if we can lower the risk of the virus spread to the level that we feel comfortable, then I think we can move on and test it.
All right, Dr. Thanarak. So your message still is don't panic, but don't lower your guard, right?
That's right. I mean, that there are two extremes of thinkings. One way is that, well, we don't have any cases, so why worry? Let's go out and have some fun, and we don't have to wear masks anymore. In that sense, it's kind of fine. But what if there is a case arrived in the countries? Then if we are not aware, or if we are not careful enough, when the first case comes, just like in Vietnam, just a few cases that arise, then we start to see a lot more cases. Now I think more than 200-300. If you look at the numbers and look at the impact in terms of how long they need to control it, instead of needing just about a few weeks, now I think it will take more than a month before the Vietnam can declare that they're virus-free once again. Right. So by working, by staying alert and careful, I think that we can avoid the large-scale outbreak by practicing these universal precaution.
Okay. All right. So I hope you will have time to take advantage of the tour package offered by the government and travel, right?
I hope so.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Thanrak, for your comments. And we come back to you in about 20 minutes to talk to you in our Thai language service. Right. For the time being, thank you very much. Okay.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you.
See you.
Okay.
And we'll be leaving you tonight with images of the Sydney Opera House illuminated with Lebanon's national emblem in solidarity for those affected by the explosion in Beirut last week. And that wraps up tonight's edition of Thai PBS World Tonight. Kun Tepchai and I'm Nad Bunak standing off, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.